speak to you now in the name of God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Amen. He was a controversial teacher. He was an astonishing presence for all kinds of healing, far more interested in making people whole than in conforming to expectations. He was a child of Judaism, but he transcended all religious and spiritual traditions. His closest followers didn't understand him. He spoke with a wisdom and an authority unheard of previously. He confronted hypocrisy and injustice, especially in the religious leaders of his own faith. And then the whole enterprise came to a crashing, tragic end. On a hill outside Jerusalem, Jesus was executed on a Roman torture device, his followers scattered in terror. But the very next day, something happened that caught them completely off guard. Having seen to his burial and still in the grip of full grief and terror of the Roman death squads who could still be looking for them, huddled in a locked room, they found Jesus in their midst, alive. It took a few of these appearances for it to really sink in that death had not been able to hold this extraordinary human. Their minds began to go back over the entire time they had spent with him. They remembered that day in the boat when they had asked, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" They remembered Jesus saying to the doubters, "So that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive," and then telling a paralyzed man to get up and carry his stretcher home, which he did. They remembered the times when he fed massive crowds from almost nothing. They remembered the day Lazarus came stumbling, unspoiled, at Jesus' command out of the tomb cave. And slowly, gradually, on a newer and deeper level, it began to dawn on them. This was him. This was the one they'd really longed for. This was the Messiah, God's anointed one, anointed to proclaim a release that was greater than any captive could dream of, anointed to make them see through the blindness of their laws and traditions, anointed to herald a kind of community where the poor and the oppressed would be brought to the table as equals. It's hard for us to imagine those times. The disciples had a huge challenge. How could they go about affirming that Jesus was the one in whom the fullness of deity was pleased to dwell, that Jesus was one with the Creator, that Jesus had meant it when he said, "I and the Father are one"? Jesus himself knew the challenge they faced. Now, you might think that he could have hung around permanently, maybe, in the resurrected body with its wounds and its amazing powers on display. Surely that would have convinced even the Romans or the most hardened scribes and lawyers of Jewish establishment. But no. Instead of Jesus hanging around, we have this transition event in which he leaves, the ascension we call it. Medieval paintings show Jesus disappearing up into the clouds as if he's wearing a jetpack. They were right to portray the cloud as the place that hides Jesus from our physical sight. Clouds have always symbolized mystery and spirit. And we can forgive their literal interpretation of Jesus rising upward. Humans have always regarded up as better, from the first time our eyes set upon the flight of a bird, or to the top of a mountain and saw miles around them, to the time we had big investments and we saw their value go up. This was a defining moment for Jesus' followers to realize that this face that they knew so well, this healer, wisdom teacher, miracle worker that they had eaten with, slept nearby, and walked miles with on the dusty roads of Palestine, was worthy to sit at the right hand of Yahweh, the unnameable Holy One of Israel. They had to let go of this human and personal relationship so that it could be transformed into a divine and personal relationship. If Jesus had hung around in his resurrected body, what would have happened? Think of it. TV interviews, world tours, theme parks. Come and see the resurrected Jesus for yourself for just $100. You can have your picture taken with him. Every family album would had Granny and Grandpa's selfie with Jesus. No, really, Jesus had to leave, to ascend. He needed the ascension, and more, we needed the ascension. But friends, the ascension alone would not have been enough. Another step was necessary. If their experience of Jesus had stopped at the ascension, the disciples would have gone back to their jobs. The women who had followed Jesus would have found themselves slipping back into the same old routines, standing by their men and raising their families. The Gospels would not have been written, and we would not know his name. Remember when he said to them, "It is for your good that I am going away, because when I go away, I will send you the Comforter." The ascension was nothing without that moment when they felt the full-on presence of Jesus, the Son of God, entering their personal lives, almost literally setting them on fire with love. That moment when they heard and felt the ruach, the wind, the breath of God empowering them. It was the ascension combined with Pentecost that set off this movement of Jesus' followers that has endured centuries of persecution, of corruption, of faulty leadership, of betrayals from within, of bad theology, and some terrible hymns to boot. Matthew's gospel describes a mountaintop event in which Jesus commissions the disciples to carry on without him. Now, the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them, and when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded. And remember, I am with you always to the end of the age." He's leaving them, but promising to be with them in a new and different way. John's gospel puts this parting and commissioning on the same day as the resurrection. Jesus appears in that locked room and says, "Peace be with you, as the Father has sent me, so I send you." When he had said this, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit." He's commissioning them as he gives them the ruach, the breath, the Spirit. What are we to take from these widely divergent moments, which seem to be so closely intertwined? I believe it is this. Without ascension and Pentecost, the resurrection is a truly remarkable phenomenon, but it doesn't clarify much about who Jesus is, and it would not have started a powerful movement. The ascension answers the question, who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? But it doesn't hold any power to commission the disciples to do anything else. When we add the Pentecost moment, which we'll celebrate next Sunday, the breathing into the followers of God's pure love, the Holy Spirit, we have an explosive completion of an infinitely powerful single moment. Yahweh God, the great creator of all, commissions a new arrangement in the risen Jesus, a new movement through his followers, confirmed and empowered by their experience of his resurrection from death, his ascension into the divine presence, and his new presence with them, which they can name only as Holy Spirit. One life-changing, world-transforming, cosmic moment. All of this brings us to the beginning of today's sermon. Fear not, it's a short sermon. It is simply this: if we seize the divine moment portrayed in these stories of resurrection, ascension, and Pentecost, we find ourselves commissioned, healed, and empowered to follow Jesus in his mission of love for all of creation. So whatever dying, whatever loss, whatever tragedy or betrayal or abandonment we experience, in Jesus we are raised up to new life. Whenever we find ourselves trapped by the confines of this world's crises, imprisoned by the limitations of these aging bodies, I had a birthday this week. Whenever we're weighed down by the brokenness of relationships and the society around us, we know that we are ascended with Christ above it all to the presence of God's pure love, which casts out fear. Whenever we feel inadequate, unloved, incapable of being who we know God calls us to be, we know ourselves to be empowered by that divine spirit of love which is poured freely into our own hearts. Knowing that Jesus is with us always to the end of the age, we're filled with faith and hope and love, and therefore with joy. Thanks be to God.